I never meant it, or had I known, I would have never done it. You have to know how to. Pesach is saying that I made the neder under a false assumption, under a false pretense. Harata means I'm upset that I made it. Okay, so let's see where we are. Right at the beginning of the new parak. Zogt the Heilige Mishnah. Oh, I forgot to speak out an interesting shaila yesterday, and I don't even remember how it's connected to the Gemara, but it was still an interesting shaila that was brought down in the Chashukei Chemed. And the question was as follows: there was a shear and a rav or a shiva, whatever, was giving a shear, and in the middle of the shear, it always happens, the guy sitting in the front, his cell phone goes off. And it's annoying, it's ringing and ringing, and you see a guy fumbling with the phone, trying to shut it off, and finally it stops. People are frustrated, it happens again. And then it happens a third time, and this time the guy who's fumbling, he gets and says, you know what, guilty is charged, I can't get my phone under control, and he left the shear. So the question was, the Rav asked, why could you control your phone? So he said, because it wasn't my phone that was ever ringing. It was actually someone sitting near me who happened to be my father. It was his phone. He didn't want to shut it off, and I didn't want him to be embarrassed. So I made believe like it was my phone. So I don't know how that was related to our Gemara, but it had to do with whether or not someone should get himself into a bad situation or something. So there's a whole trial of what was the right thing to do. Was it right for him to take responsibility or not? It was a very interesting trial, but it happens all the time. And now I look at things differently. Maybe the guy who I'm giving a dirty look to, maybe it wasn't even his fault. He's just trying to deflect the pressure from the next fellow. Okay, let's see the Heilige Mishnah. So the Ma'iriya gives us a structure of how the Masechta works. So first, the Mishnah was teaching us about different types of Nedarim. Then the Gemara was talking about certain types of Nedarim that you can get out of, like the Stam Nedarim Lahachmer, if you explain. And now the Mishnah is talking about Nedarim that don't even count at all. So they're not even Nedarim to begin with. Arba Nedarim Hetiru Chachamim. There are 4 types of Nedarim that the Chacham were matir that you don't even need to be shoyal. And they are Nidrei Zeruzin. And this doesn't mean people who are being desires themselves to do a mitzvah. Rather, the Ran explains what it is. So let's see the Ran. Arba Nedarim Hetiru Chachamim Mefarish B'Gemara. They don't even stand on their own. Nidrei Zeruzin. Shaloi Nadar Ela Lazaris Chaveroi Shaloi Yamoid B'Daydek Kedem Mefarish V'Azor. You're negotiating with somebody, and you make a neder to portray your position as being so unflexible that your opponent, so to speak, won't even think to try to squeeze you. And we're going to have specific examples of what that is shortly. The nidrei havoy, stam nonsense, neder she'enei klum. It's a neder of nonsense, and the Gemara is going to give examples of these as well later on. And then there is nidrei shkagois, which the Gemara will explain. It was said by mistake. And then the neder eintin, another that was made on a tanai that you couldn't fulfill. So if I'm not back in 12 hours, koinim peiros alai. And I was planning to come back in 12 hours, but something happened out of my control. But we're going to focus first on Nidrei Zeruzin. Nidrei Zeruzin Keita. Somebody was selling his car. I'm selling my car, and I want $3,000 for my car. But I want to show that I'm not flexible. Sometimes when you read the Kijiji ads, firm, right? Firm. What does firm mean? He's asking $3,000 firm. He won't give it to you for less than $2,000. If he's not firm, he'll give it to you for free if you walk away from it. So you want to show this is firm. So he said, I'm asking a seller, so it can't be a car. He's selling a fruit. I'm selling you a bushel of pears. I'm making a neder that if I let you pay me less than a seller, which happens to be 4 dinarim, if I reduce my price to less than 1 seller, then all of the money that you give me is going to be asher bana. That's how I'm making clear that I'm not going to drop my price. And of course, the person buying it, he's very nispal from this guy's resolve, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to give you a penny more than 2 dinar, which is only half of what you asked." So what is the halacha? It's not a nether at all because all along Shneim Roitin B'Shloisha Dinyan. They were both willing to. He was willing to buy and he was willing to sell for 10 dinar. But that's how it goes. For 3 dinar, right? For 3 dinar. But that's how it goes. So it's not even a nether to begin with. In other words, the Ran's going to tell us in a second. Let the Ran tell us. All of what you pay me should be also to me. If I depart from the schefetz and I let you have it for less than a selah, the buyer is just as firm. What I'm looking to purchase should be also to me. So the halacha is Shneim Roitzen B'Shloisha Dinrin. Zok Taran Shamoicher Hayadaita L'Shloisha. When the moicher says, "I'm not going to give it to you for a penny less than 4," he meant he was going to give it to you for 3, which is exactly what it means, firm on Kijiji, right? All I was trying to do is dislodge the resolve of the purchaser who said he won't pay more than 2 dinners. But I never thought I would get 4. Thank you very much, Mati. Right? That's really all he was trying to do. The Lakeach asked for 3. He just wanted to break the Moicher's resolve to get 4 dinars. The nether is not chal at all. In other words, we're going to soon see that I'm even allowed to sell it for less than 3, or I'm allowed to buy it for more than 3. So even though we know my intent was 3, the nether is not chal for 3 either. It's no nether at all. The time of the milza, that's how give and take. That's how negotiation works. And therefore, this is a normal figure of speech, but it's not a nether. I'm sorry? They're at the judge.
Where I'm not going.
But they don't make the item that they're marketing for us earlier. How do we tie Zayus in this context in English? Like coerced?
How do we touch what?
Zayus.
It means to stimulate. Zayus means to stimulate, to encourage, to.
I mean, you're not stimulating the other person.
Oh yes, I am. I'm getting him to motivation. We're motivating him to drop his demand. This is negotiation 101.
But he says Kona, so that is a netter, isn't it? I mean,
Chazal say that doesn't mean a kohen. He never meant it. Chazal saying, and they know in his psyche that he never ever meant it. That's why it's a huge chiddush.
yeah, so it diminishes the power of a netter.
Well, it nullifies it completely.
Yeah, nullifies it, yeah. So we're not supposed to say meaningless Nadarim. So what? I don't get it.
No one's suggesting that this is a good thing to do, but we're questioning if he did that, what would Allah be? Kula Alma Moida, this is not appropriate. The person should not do this. But we're discussing the aftermath. That's right. It's literally the aftermath. It's doing the math after he made the nether. Who's going to pay what? Right? I always tell people when I make chasna, I like figuring out before what it's going to cost instead of just looking at the credit bill afterwards and do the aftermath. Because before math always comes out cheaper than aftermath. So I like doing the math before. Okay, let's see the Heilige Gemara. Arba Nedarim Hitir Chacham. Amar Lei, Rav Abba Bar Mama, Rabbi Ami. Rav Abba Bar Mama told Rav Ami, Amar Tlon Mishmei de Rabbi Yehuda Nisia. You said this in the name of Yehuda the Nisia. What did you tell us? Man Tana Arbar Nedarim. Who is the Tana of the Mishnah of Arbar Nedarim? Rabbi Yehuda he. The Amar Mishum Rab Tarfon. It was Rabbi Yehuda who said it in the name of Rab Tarfon. And what was this halacha? We had this halacha before. If 2 people see a man coming towards them, and one person says, if this is your uncle coming, because they didn't recognize him yet, if this is your uncle coming, I accept upon myself Naziris. And his friend said, If this is not Yankel coming, I accept upon myself Naziris. I have a friend who's a stockbroker, and when he first started, he was trying to get business from some of the wealthy people in the community. And sometimes there's wealthy people in the community who have an interesting personality, right? There is such a thing. There is such a thing. So he went over to this very wealthy man and he solicited his business. He said, I think it would make you a lot of money if you put $20,000 into this stock, because this stock was going to go up. So the guy says, okay, I'll give you business. I'll give you 20,000, but I want you to short that stock. I want you to short the stock. The stock that you're telling me I should buy, I want you to short it. So he did it. He lost his pants, but at least he got the business. Zog to Gemara. So he said in the name of Rav Ein echad mehen nazir. So neither one of these people are a nazir. Why? Lefi shaloi nitna naziris ela lahaflo. A nazir, a kabbalas naziris, will not be valid unless it's clear at the time that you make your naziris that is a proper naziris. Okay, Rav Amar, Rav says. So what we're saying is, so the time of our Mishnah is saying that since at the time that we're making this neder, it's not clear if it's going to be chal, because I said if I sell it to you for less than a selah, then it's asur b'hano. We don't know at the time what the deal is going to be, right? Before we made the deal, it's not clear what the deal will be. So therefore, the whole neder is not good. Why? Because it wasn't clear at the time that the lekeach and the moicher made their individual nedarim that they would have that trigger. I'm sorry? Pretty much anything, correct. And that's shot in our Mishnah. Rav Amar, afilu tema rabbanon, even if you want to say that a neder on a t'nai does work. Mika tani, shneim rotzu, shneim roitzen katani. It doesn't say shneim rotzu, they both eventually agreed to do the deal for 3. Shneim roitzen means even with Bishas, when he made the neder, that was his intent, only for 3. So let's see the Heilig Aram. Zok the Heilig Aram. Rav Amar, afilu. Let's actually go literally. Naziris alulafla. V'hod nedarim. Like Duvi said, it will apply to all the dorm. The Ishish Naziris, the loy chayil elam ken yikabel beloitnai. Right. So Duvi mentioned that. Are you saying that a t'nai doesn't work? That's exactly what Rav Tarfon is saying. Hilchach moicher v'lekeach. Since the neder was made and it was dependent on the t'nai, on the trigger, whether it was bichal, because a neder doesn't work on the t'nai. You need haflah at the time you spoke it out. It has to be clear. But Rav says no. Rav Amar filu tema rabbanon mikatanu shneim ratzu kloimar the masnizim the nidri zeruzin lav mishum haflah. The problem is not because I made a t'nai, because if that was the case, it wouldn't be a problem. Because we don't hold like Rav Tarfon. Elo mishum sheshamu chachamim daitom, the chachamim assessed what their psyche was thinking. Shaloi nodru v'davka elo lizares. They were just trying to move the other guy. The mikatanu rotzu. It doesn't say shneim rotzu b'shloisha dinarim. If the Mishnah would have said that, then sheyehei mashma usoi sherotzu l'besoif, that at the time they meant the neder, but then they changed their mind. No, we're saying it was never a neder in the first place. They never even wanted the seller. They never even wanted the shekel. Shneim roitzim katoni, the masha mitchila v'atzai. So in other words, here it's not a good neder because it was never a neder. As I'm speaking the neder out, I never meant that neder, and there's an anansa hadi that Chazal tell us that you never meant to make that neder, because even while you said you wouldn't give it away for a penny less than a seller, had he offered you 3 on the spot, you would have taken it in a flash. So your whole words, you never meant to say that. Correct around. At the original point, where we thought it's because any t'nai doesn't count, the time of the masnishim mishum haflahu. So if that's the case, lama leila mishnah shneim roitzim v'shloshel dinarim. Why does the Mishnah say that they both agreed at the end to 3 dinarim? And we'll learn pshat of Amar. And then even if they only agreed at the end, the Mishnah would still make sense. Why? Because a nether with its nai doesn't work. Even if he gave it away for us, even if the moicher gave it away for a shekel, or if the lakech actually paid a seller, their nether would still be bottled because it's a tanai, it's an invalid nether. Kivin shebeshas not nidron loy hayim isbar hadavar im yachalim la. So according to the Havamina of the Gemara, regardless, it wouldn't have been a good nether, right? So it's not a good nether because it's a nether not nai, not because they both agreed to 3. Bishlam, according to the second shot, since we're saying they always agreed to 3, we're saying when the Mishnah says Shneim Rochim Shlosh Dinarim, that's an explanation why their original nether was not valid. But if the problem is because it was a Tnai, then the fact that Shneim Rochim Shlosh Dinarim is not relevant. The problem was that there was a Tnai. And even if one of them really meant it, it still wouldn't be a good nether because he made it with a Tnai. But near Be'enai, the Tana Rabusa Katani. The Tana is telling us an extra chiddush. The loy mi boy bishnayim show you mahalchem b'derech. Not only in a case where 2 people are walking down the street. V'yomer echad men hareni nazir shezeish ploini. V'yomer chaver henon hareni nazir she'enoi. So that was the original case of haflaw. There it's pasha to ein echad mehem nazir. Ki Rabbi Yehuda mishum martarfin. Why? The hasim dinu shaloi tachol nazirusam. There it's a svara that the nazir shouldn't be chal. V'vishi'i efshar lochol naziris al shneim. It's impossible that both of their utterances should be valid because the guy is either Yankel or not Yankel. So there's no way that both of them can possibly be Nazirison. Since one fellow we know for sure is not a Nazir, surely the other guy isn't. Originally, when they made their statement, one of them for sure is not a valid statement. That's clear. The Tana holds that wouldn't be a good Naziris. But in our case, it's not quite the same. In our case, it's possible that both of them will trigger the Naziris, or in this case, the nether. Because if I pay more than a shekel, and if you sell it for less than a seller, like the way we settled on 3, which technically triggered both Nedarim. Therefore, and that's exactly what happened, that both Nedarim were actually triggered. Each one of these, wherever they're Tnai. So here you have a better haflaw, because it's possible that each of these people, their nether would be triggered. That even this wouldn't be a good nether of haflaw. So this was a little bit of a detour, but now we have a little bit of clarity. If you hold that a nether doesn't work on a Tnai, it's even if it's possible for your Tnai to work, it doesn't make a difference. And Rav is learning that this is much more than that. It's in the Nan Sahadi from Chazal that this person, even though he said a nether, he never meant a nether. He never intended to get a full selah for the product, and Lakeach never expected that he would never expected to get the product for a shekel. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara Vayter. Rav Amar Filtem Rabbanim Mikatani Shneim Ratzu Shneim Reitzin Katani, meaning Reitzin, even at the time when they made the nether, they never had an intention to actually sell for that much or buy for that little. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. What happened if he used a different amount? Amalei Tvei Misela. So instead of the Moicha saying, if I sell it for a seller, if I sell it for less than a seller, I'm going to make a nether to Asher the Hana of the money that I get for it. What if he said, if I sell it for less than a seller and a pruta? So there's 2 things happening here. A is I'm being more precise in my target, not just throwing out a number, right? By saying $1, saying $1.12, there's more precision there. If I'm speaking at $1.12, that's A. B is our positions are further apart. Our positions are now further apart. So here's the question. What would happen is, so there's 2 reasons why this might, yes, be a valid nether, A, I was more precise, so maybe I'm not just trying to get him up to 3. And B is we're further apart. Balamer bottom shekel. Nidra hava or zeruzin hava. What would be the halacha? Is it a good nether or is it only zeruzin? And the Ram explains. Amalet femisela. Kloimar. So now I gave a higher amount, and it was even with precision. Well, al shekel, meaning I'm not going to give you a shekel. I'm willing to give you not 50 cents. I'm willing to give you 49 cents. So it's more exact. So now the Ram explains the student of the shaila. The ikal you can argue, keeping the nachas kula haila de yuka. Since he was so precise with the amount that he said, I'm going to insist upon getting or paying, that means it's a real nether. He really meant that he wanted that price. There's another lashon. Do you say, keeping the merchek kula high, maybe since they're so far apart, if we're within range of each other, so I'm just trying to move you a little bit into the middle. But if we're so far apart, maybe I want that price. Maybe I'm actually asking, I really mean the higher price, and therefore it should be a good nether. So there's 2 reasons why it will be a good nether. Either because I'm more precise, or from the fact that we're so far apart shows that we're not even in a negotiating position. This is the price. Zok to Gemara, let's see if we can bring a raya to this shaila. Tanino. Somebody is inviting his friend, come eat by me, come to me for the Shabbos meal. And whoever it was didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to eat by you lunch today for whatever reason. And in order to stop you from bothering me and continuing to pester me with invitations, the guest said, I'm putting an isser on your house that I'm not allowed to go into your house. Or tipas tzoinin shani toyin. I'm not even going to drink a drop of water, never mind Perrier, tap water. I'm not going to drink 1 drop of water from you. Nevertheless, mutter lichonis leveisai. You're allowed to go into his house. In other words, your nether is not chal. The lishto say menu tzoinin, and you're allowed to drink a nice glass of cold water. Shaloi nischavin zeh ela l'shomachilo ushtia. All he meant was that I don't want to eat a meal by you, but I would never have meant. That's going to be the question. That is the question of the hour. So I only meant that I didn't want to have a whole meal by you, but a glass of water I would want. So Moti's asking. So achilu shtia, I didn't mean to aser. Would that be aser? I didn't say that, right? I never said achilu shtia. I said something. So we have to discuss that. V'amai. Why should we say that it's mutter v'tipas tzadin ka'amar? Ella, what do you have to say? Mishtoi inishachi. People speak that way, even though they don't mean it. Hachanami mishtoi inishachi. That's how people speak. But there's a lot to talk about here, so let's see the Heilig around. Shaloi nischav in zeh ella l'shem achilu shtia. Alma, you see from here. Afal gav denachas l'diyuka. In this case, he was being very precise, and they were very far apart. Right? You want to give me a whole meal. I said I won't even take a drop of water. I'm not even walking into your house. So here I was very specific. And I'm far apart. I went so far to aser even stepping into his home. He wasn't bedafke another. Hachanami, so to hear, Aval the Omar, even though he said, even though his nether was, I will give it to you, I will not give it to you for less than even more than the seller, the min shekel zeruzin hava v'lav dafter, and it's lav dafter. So I think Tosis of the Rush, it proves that even though we're further apart and we're more precise, it's still lav dafter. He still never meant it. So I believe the Rishonim speak specifically about it. He didn't take. He didn't take Mechitas Rechnam. So there you see, he was precise. But first, we don't even know if we don't even know what halacha is if he was used to eat it. So let me see what it's. I think someone speaks up a farish that avada. It's here it is. But if you look at the last line in the Tosfos in the first Rosh, the choshein shemuter b'achilu u'shtia, mashalo hisker. He never said achilu b'shtia. He said soinen. So yeah, he might have meant achilu u'shtia, but he didn't say that. The kiva the mashahoitze b'piv einei neder. Since the words that he said, I won't even walk into your house. I won't have a drop of soinen. That's not a neder. Gam ha-machshava in a klum. His machshava not to eat a whole meal there, that's also not a valid neder. If you make a neder in your mind, you accept the place of a neder, that's not a good neder, even though you're not contradicting your thought with your words. Kolchkin here, Kolchkin here where my words are actually contradicting my thoughts. So avada, I am allowed to eat the meal there as well. Just don't tell the fellow that's bugging me because I want him to think that I can't eat the meal. That was the whole purpose of why I said I won't come to his house, right? Well, the Gemara is saying it sounds very menedish. People speak that way, and that's not a nether. It's only a Jeruzin. Hakanami mishtoi inishaki. Omar lay. So he answered back. So who's talking over here? Who is talking over here? Ravina Ravashi. So Ravina told Ravashi. So Ravashi answered. So Ravina told back to Ravashi, Midami, how can you compare the case of the person making a neder not to go to his friend's house to our case of business? Midami, Gabitzaiden, Tzadikim Oimer Ma'at V'Oisin Harbe. You know why I had to swear that I won't even have a glass of water in your house? Because I know how the tzaddikim work. No, don't eat by me. Just come for a drink. And then once you're there, at the bishchan do, have a cake. You know what? Make kiddush. I'm going to make you some fish. So, that's why he had to say that. Because that's how tzaddikim work. They're telling you, I'm just going to give you a drink. And then they give you a whole meal. It's exactly like Avraham Avinu. And I want to get to that in a second. But here it's a real suffix. Dilma pachas misela v'yoser al shekel ka'amar v'ziruzin havi. Dilma davka ka'amar v'nidra hava. That's the word tiboy, which is teku in Nedarim language. Let's see the Helagrah. Midami. Gabi tzayin tzadikim ayim mat v'yoser harbe. Hilchach. Mystery. The person making the nether is afraid. The moidele v'tipas tzayin. If I agree to even go take a small glass of water, I know what's going to happen. He's not going to let me out of his house, and he's going to force me to join for the whole Suda. That's why I said Tipas Toinen. But Avada, he never meant anything. But in our case, we can't say that. Maybe he meant Dafka. He's not going to give it away for less than what he said. We don't have a teretz. We don't have a Shubatar Shaila. We naktinu l'chumra. And we pass in l'chumra. So don't say those things. So on the topic of Avram, that's exactly what this fellow was afraid of. He was afraid of him, of this host pulling Avram on him and giving him more than he originally offered. So as an aside, Rabbi Raza spoke at a very interesting child. What happened was Avram Avinu, we just had it in the last week's parsha, so it's close enough. It's like a Lublin strikes again. Avram Avinu was speaking to Hashem, and he abandoned Hashem to go take care of the three malachim who he thought were guests. So the Gemara tells us that we learn from Avram Avinu that Gadol hachnos esorchem yoyser mikabolos pnei Shechina, because Avram Avinu was being mekabel pnei Shechina, right? And he left Hashem. Hashem, wait 1 minute, I got someone more important than you, and he ran to be duach nasorchem. So that's how we learn it. But the question is, how did Avram Avinu know? He was speaking to Hashem, and how did he know to tell Hashem, wait 1 minute? It's a shtickle chutzpah. Where did Avram get it from? So this is a Belch kasha. I could see from David's eyes that he has a teretz. I see from your eyes that you have a teretz. You see that?
The Rebbeinu Shalom came, but he didn't say anything. He was just hanging around. He wasn't making a statement. He didn't. He was just there.
So I don't understand what you're saying. So therefore, what? You mean so therefore? So you said so therefore. That's why it's greater than Kabbalah's place because he wasn't really doing the Kabbalah's place.
No, therefore No, there was a pause in the,
So it was sort of like, he paused for a second, Keel to say, you have guests, go take care of them. Okay, that's a
Sort
partial
of.
shot. That's Shumikr. That's a very partial shot.
It's simply pshat.
That's simply shot. That's
Simply
right. That's
pshat.
simply shot. It seems it's logical. So under people say is Avraham Avinu, his gut told him. He wasn't a mitzvah voice. His gut told him. But someone came up with a little bit of an ingenious. I'm sorry.
His God told
His gut told him. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good. But under say a very interesting shot. That we all know that there was a distinction between the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu versus the nevuah of the rest of the Nevi'im. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw, I remember I couldn't get the words out, but I see in Bas Paklaria Ha'Me'ira, he saw it clearly. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to initiate a conversation with the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Nevi'im had to wait till the Rebbeinu Shalom came to them, and all the other Nevi'im, they were not conscious when they had nevuah. Avraham Avinu, Moshe Rabbeinu was conscious. So Avraham Avinu said, "Hey, I'm having a nevuah from Hashem. Normally, I wouldn't be conscious because I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. Yet I noticed those three people coming. How did I notice those three people coming? It must be Hashem wanted me to notice them because really I should be unconscious. Oh, that must be a symbol that I should go take care of them. That's what someone wanted to tell me.
The Rambam actually says that it never happened. It was even the three Anashim were a nevuah.
Uh-huh.
It was a vision.
So then it's even better. So if in the vision Hashem showed him the three people, Hashem wanted him to go take care of them. But I like this shot the best. There was a pause, like you have guests here. I'll stop for a second. That's the most poshut shot. Okay, so let's see the Gemara right there. So we remain with the Shaila, how detailed will someone get while still only using it as a negotiating ploy? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Basi. Arba Nedarim Halalu, these four Nedarim, Srichin Sheila Lacham. Even though we say they're not Nedarim, they still need Sheila. Ki Amrisa Kamei de Shmuel, when I told this over to Shmuel, Amar, he said that doesn't make any sense at all. Tana Tani, Arba Nedarim Hitiru Chachamim, which means they're mutter. The At Amrit, Srichin Sheila Lacham, that makes no sense at all. So let's nix what you just said. Let's try another member. Rabbi Yosy Masni La Shmaitza B'Hailish. This is how Rabbi Yosy quoted this member. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabasi, Ein Chacham Rishoi Lahatir Ela Ke'ein Arba Nedarim Halalu. When someone comes with a real nether, and he's coming to the Chacham to be shoyal on his nether, so the Chacham has to find him a Pesach or Charato, which we're going to get into now. So Rabbi Yehuda Marav is saying, is what's an example of what would be a good Pesach? Something like these Nedarim. So now we're getting into an extremely technical but important Yosod in Nedarim. How are you matter neder? Is it with Charata or is it with Pesach? And let's try to get a feel of what these things are. And this is going to be one of the most important runs. Ein chacham mater ela ke'en arba nedarim halalu. Kloimar, Rabbi Rosner has something called the top 10 runs. So this is one of the top 10 runs because it's Nagaya all over Shas. It's the Yosod of Nedarim. Kloimar, she'ein loy lahatir b'charata ela b'pesach. So right off the bat, the chiddush is that charata does not work for a neder. It has to be a pesach. So now that we know that charata doesn't work and pesach does work, we need to know exactly what each of these words mean. Shaneder kishu niter b'pesach, when a neder is being nitar with a pesach, moichiach mitoichoi shehu neder tos. The neder on its face, it's clear that the whole neder was made under false premises. And then v'hava ke'ein arba nedarim. So that's exactly why we're comparing it to the nedarim in our Mishnah. We have to illustrate that this neder that was made never had any validity, just like the nedarim in our Mishnah never had validity. So a Pesach means I made a neder, ich weiß, that I wasn't going to eat apples, but if I knew that I had a medical condition, that if I didn't eat apples, I would die, I never knew that. So then the whole premise of my neder was false, because I made it not knowing that I couldn't have made it. I would have never made it. But I made it that I won't eat apples, and then I was dying for an apple, so I changed my mind, I want an apple. That doesn't work. You can't change your mind. Another means you can't change your mind. That's why you made another. V'hainu taima, the other Pesach micharata. This is the reason why a Pesach actually works better than charata. L'vishakol nedar shu niter b'Pesach. When you use a Pesach to release a neder, haray hanoider oimer. The noider is saying, shafilu b'tchila kishanadar. Even when I originally made a neder, ilu haya noishin aliboy oisay Pesach. Had I contemplated that concern, loy haya noider, I would never have made that neder. In other words, it was a mistake. The nimsin nidra betos. My whole neder from its inception was a mistake.
The only thing that.
I want to finish the round. Let me finish the round first. We're middle of the round. Avol neder shu niter b'charata, but a neder that you're being matter b'charata. Einay moitza yimachmai shum inyan sheilu haya nois no yaliboy mitchila shelo haya noider. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that even had it been brought to him at the time he made his neder, it would have prevented him from making the neder. Elishu Oimer, all that happened is Achshav, Elishu Oimer Achshav, he's saying now, Mitoich Akas, Oimipne Mihirus Nadarti. Why did I make the neder at the time? Because I was angry. I was passionate. There was something that made me, but there was no specific piece of information that I would have not made the neder had I known it. The Achshav, in other words, if I knew that I had a medical deficiency that without apples I would die, no matter how angry I am, if you would have told me that, I wouldn't have made the neder. But if I just made it because I was angry and now I'm upset that I made it,
So the I would have known it's a medical condition, I wouldn't have made that. That's not charata.
because so charata means is that at the time I wanted to make it, now I'm not happy anymore. At the time I really meant it.
If he wouldn't have the medical condition, he would want it. Now that he has a medical condition, he's charata.
No, now that I have now that I know I have a medical condition, I have charata that I ever made it at the beginning. I would have never made it at the beginning. But here I would have made it at the beginning. For the first 3 months I was fine not eating apples. Now it's getting tough. Now I don't want it anymore. So charata means I was good with it until now. Now I don't want it anymore. But
it's charuta means in this case, if I would know it would be so hard, I would never.
so it's going to come out a little bit. It's going to come out a little more clearly because we're even now going to break down charata, because there's one level of charata that's like a Pesach, and there's one level of charata that's like a neder. So we're going to see this a little bit further. So right now, what Rabbi Yehuda Amar Basi is saying is only if there's information that had I known it, I would never have made the neder, then that's a good Pesach. But if it's just because now it's getting inconvenient to do, that will not work. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Basi ein chacham shrei lahatir alakein arbor nedar malolu kasavar ein hoischin b'charata. He holds that you cannot use charata as a way to get out of the neder. Okay. Now, I want to point out that it's going to come out clear. There's two types of charata. There's charata where I was very angry when I made a neder, and if I would have been calm, I would never have made a neder, right? So that's also charata, it's a shtickle like a Pesach, which I think is what you were referring to. But then there's a charata where no, at the time I was fine. Now it's not the gishmak anymore. Now I want out. So there's two types of charata. Now it seems from the Ram that what we're learning now is even the type of charata where I'm saying I was angry at the time, I shouldn't have done it, even that's not good to be matir the neder. It has to be new information that would have prevented me from making the neder. Right? Do you agree with me that is what the Ram is saying? But it's not.
It's hard. It's like time said. We're talking about a medical condition versus I don't like the result of my words.
Okay, so we'll have other examples. Yeah. We'll have other examples. Someone came to Rav Huna to ask him to be matir neder. Amala, he asked him, libcha olecha. What does libcha olecha means? Kloimar, the Ran actually has two pshatim in libcha olecha. Either kloimar, hoya libcha meyushav olecha b'shash nedarta, were you calm and cool when you made your neder? V'gam achshav, and now as well, einoch soya b'nidrach. You don't have a problem with your neder. Avayoim, today you decided that it's not gishmak anymore. But up until this point, you made a legitimate neder, and now you changed your mind. From today on, it's inconvenient. You don't want to be subject to that nether anymore. The ihavi ki hagavna, if it was like that, loy charata mikri. That's not even charata. So even the charata that some people allow, it's not a charata where you made a legitimate nether, everything was perfect, and now it's getting inconvenient for you, so you want to renege on your commitment. Because charata, that's a valid charata, even if you hold charata works, it has to be the charata meikar be'inon. It has to be that you're claiming I was not of sound mind when I made that nether, I made it out of anger. Let me finish right. Or maybe you were not calm at the time that you made the nether. And now you're saying, what an idiot I was, because I was angry, I had to prove a point, it was a stupid thing that I did. That's a charata that would be acceptable, even if charata is acceptable. Inami, or maybe what he meant when he asked, are you still in the same frame of mind that you were at the time? Which means you always wanted the nether and now it's not convenient. So basically what Rav Huna is saying is, I will accept a charata without new information, provided that that you're claiming that when you made the nether, you were angry and you were passionate. But if not, no. He said, no, I was very angry at the time, and now that I calmed down, I should have never made the nether. Visharya, and he was matir. So you see that Rav Huna is arguing, and Rav Huna holds that poischin b'charata. You know what he's saying?
From the story here, from the two students, shows that if this status was then already in anger, to mention that become allergic to milk, that looks like the problem. Yes.
Now, if I knew that I would become allergic, that would also be a pesach. But let's go. The Gemara is going to elaborate more because we're going to bring a whole bunch of cases, so we'll see the nuances. So I hear. Well, that's also a child. If the roof is allowed to add, that's going to be discussed as well. Hahud also lekamei the Rabbi Barafuna. Someone came to Rabbi Barafuna. Amala, he told him, Ilu hoya. If at the time you made your nether and you were all angry, what would have been if there were 10 people there as you were making the nether? Ilu hoya asar b'nei adam. That would have tried to calm you down at that time when you made the nether. Minadarta, we would have made the nether, because if he says no, so then Viter, he's showing that he would not have. The Hitira, and he was matter. Now that that was the question. Is this a Pesach or is this Charata? That's exactly the question that I wanted you to ask. Because there's actually Gersoyis here. There's a Gersa that says Viter ain't Poischim b'Charata. That's one Gersa. And there's another Gersa that says here, so that is exactly a machloikis in the Rishonim about how to understand this. And let's see the Ran. Zok the Heilige Ran, Omer leiloi, Kloimar, Shaloi mitech yishav adas nadarti. So this is the first shtickle. Ulefichach ani mischarit, and that's why I have charata, because keshenadarti me'olam u'mishvach yishari. Umiyu davko b'charata de mekar. So once again, the Ran is saying, even when charata works, even if you're Mekel and you hold Charata works, it's only Charata the Mekara, Ki Hagavna, where I said I was not of sound mind when I made that nether. I will be Charata the Hash Deloy. Even if you hold Poshim Becharata, it has to be a Charata the Mekara. If you don't say that, my Lishna the Poiskin Becharata. It's not Poisik, right? Even Charata has to be with a Poisik. The Mashma the best in Poiskin. Rabhuna, Lamalel Mishal Midi. If a guy can come and say, I changed my mind now, so why is there a need to probe a guy who's coming? He's obviously mischared now. What's he doing here? Right? I don't need to know if the charata was from before. He obviously has charata now. So that's how you know for sure the charata from now is useless. From the guy who came to him, the Vada, Kibin Shoy Yishoyel, Heter, Mischar Torah in the Dre. The fact that he came, he's mischared. But he still needed to probe to see if the charata was because he didn't make it of sound mind. It's clear, Kim Yisrael, Heter, Mischar Toyal Nidra, Mikam Veilach. You know for sure he's Mischar Mikam Veilach. But that doesn't help you. You need to know it's Charata the Mekara. But Lama Lamishlamina, Libachalecha, Alavad Mishum Delisagi Bicharata the Hashta, Ella Bicharata the Mekara, have a Shalom for the precious. What Rafuna was probing is his Charata the Mekara, or is it a Charata the Hashta, which wouldn't work? So now let's see Mati Shaila. Ilu Haya Asar Ben Adam Shefuzah, and you see the ran sticks in, Kasavar. You see that you can't be Pesach b'charata, so you needed this ilu haya, which is a Pesach. But the Ikar is exactly the opposite. From here you have a right at Kasavar Pesach b'charata, because the 10 people would have just calmed them down no new information, and would have given him charata. Zokter, and it doesn't really matter how you're garish, because kula al mamoid, like Moti said, this is not quite charata, but it's definitely not a pesach. It's somewhere in the middle. The ilu hayu yud b'nei adam garmi pesach. It's not as good as a pesach with completely new information, but v'adif mi charata. But it is better than a regular charata. Garmi pesach mishum deloy hayu achshav yud b'nei adam shifaisu. A pesach means something changed. 10 people didn't come now. Right? If something new happened, that had I known this was going to happen, I wouldn't have made another. That's a real Pesach. Here, there's no real Pesach. 10 people never came. The name of Pesach Ma'al Yahava. If he would have known that later on 10 people would have talked him out of it, but for other becharata, it's still better than a standard charata. Mishum de becharata greda einay moitze shum inyan ba'atzmoi shemachmased lo hayinoida b'yisashah. There's no specific thing that he could have said would have triggered him not to make the nether. He's just saying I was angry at the time. He's just saying, had I calmed down, I wouldn't have made the nether. By having this example of if 10 people were there, it creates a greater clarity. So it just basically highlights with more clarity that I was not of sound mind when I made that nether. Mushamaki, Mandagars ain't posting the charata means Hachik Amar. The charata gradasa ain't posting, Ella Becharata she misbareres yafa. Kazu. Only a clear type of charata. Mandagars posting the charata, Hachik Amar. Labai Pesach el charata barua. So this is clearly a hybrid shita. It's a higher level of charata, but it's not quite a Pesach, and that's what's being illustrated in this story. Let's go back there. Tanya, Rabbi Aimer, they tell the person, Leiv ze alecha, is this hard on you? In other words, were you of sound mind? Imam Lav Matir, which would mean Poshim B'charata. Rabbi Shmuel Yosy Aimer, Mishum Aviv, Arim lo Adam, Ido Hayu Asar ben Adam Sheyafasucha B'Shashah, Mina Darta, Imam Lav Matir Noisai. So you see, there's a little bit of a shaila of what level of charata is needed, but everyone here holds Poshim B'charata. Let me just finish the Gemara because we're running late. Someone came to Rabasi. Amrullah, he told him, Kadu Taz, will you have sound mind? Amrullah Loi Visharia. Which means Rabasi here is saying that Poshim the Charata. The problem is if you scroll back a couple of lines, the first thing was Amar Abidu Amar Rabasi, you need a Pesach. So the Ran asks the stira. So the Ran says one of them is Ravasi and one of them is Rebbe Asi. Because clearly the first Ravasi we had said ain't Poshim b'charata, but here Ravasi clearly said Poshim b'charata. Who does look made to Rabbi Lozer? Someone came to Rabbi Lozer. Amalei boys nether. Are you happy that you made the nether? Amalei, are you kidding me? If they wouldn't have made me angry at the time, whatever was going on, they got me angry. I would have never wanted to touch a nether. Amalei teheka boys. It should be like you want. In other words, I'm being mattered another. Once again, Poshim b'charata. Hey Itza, Dadarta Labarta. She made another answering her child, her daughter, to have any hanol from her nechasim. Also, like Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Lo, he told her, Ilu Hava Yadas. If you would have known that when you made this nether, people would start talking. The Amrin Megir Techala, your neighbors would say Allah Debartach. Your neighbors would say about your daughter, Ilu Chamaba Ima Milinda Aziva. If the mother didn't see something very bad by her daughter that made her deserving of being cut out of her mother's will, Bechdi lo yadarta, it would have never been done for no reason. Had you known that by you making this nether, you're making your daughter look really, really bad, would you have made the nether miyadarta? Okay, we'll stop here. We'll be mamshech tomorrow. So you see that most of the shittas haven't told that points can be charata, but it can't be charata that now it's inconvenient. Charata can mean, oh, did I make a mistake? Why was I so hot-headed? I should have never done it.
Because so the 10 people would calm him down before he made the neighbor or after the neighbor?
Well, it says if there were 10 people calming you down, would you have made another? She said, no, I wouldn't have. So it has to be